Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salatu wa salamu ala man la nabiyya ba'dahu amma ba'd. This might be the last Majlis before Ramadan, because next Friday might be Ramadan. So diverting away from what we normally do, which is Fazail Sadaqat, just a little passage from Hazrat Shaykh Rahmatullah Alayhi's Kitab Akabir Ka Ramadan, the Ramadan of the Akabir. And at the end, Hazrat Shaykh Rahmatullah Alayhi mentions the Ma'mulat of Hazrat Moulana Ilyas Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi when he came to Ramadan. So we just read a bit from there, and inshallah Dhikr Majlis after that. Ma'mulat Hazrat Moulana Muhammad Ilyas Sahib Dahlawi Rahmatullah Alayhi, the Ma'mulat of the habit in Ramadan of Hazrat Moulana Muhammad Ilyas Sahib Khandalvi Rahmatullah Alayhi, or Dahlawi, the Amir of Tabligh, the founder of Tabligh. Hazrat Shaykh Rahmatullah Alayhi says कि मेरे चचा जान Hazrat Moulana Ilyas Sahib रहमतुल्लाह अलैह के वाक़यात भी आप बीती में बेमहल गुजरते रहे. He says the stories regarding my uncle Moulana Ilyas Sahib has passed inside our BT, my biography. उस वक्त ख़ास रमज़ान मेरी निगाह में है. मेरे चचा जान नवरमल करो का मामूल खानला की ख़ानदानी रिवायत के मुताबिक जैसा कि ऊपर गुजरा ये था. He says that I remember and I know how he used to spend Ramadan specifically, and as it was the way of the Buzrugs and the Mashaykh of our family, it was the habit of my uncle Hazrat Moulana Ilyas Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi कि इफ्तार के वक्त जो कुछ खाना होता था उसी वक्त अपना खा लेते थे. Whatever was present at the time of iftar, he would eat that. There was no, I want to prepare this or prepare that, or this should be there or that should be there. Whatever was ma hadar, whatever was present, he would eat. चाय का एहतिमाम चचा जान के दौर में था. He used to be diligent in drinking tea. बहुत ही मुख्तसर खाना होता था. He used to eat very little. ईशा अबीक नहीं था. ईशा अबीक नहीं था. I'm not sure what that means. मुख्तसर खाना होता था. वो खाना आशा अबीक नहीं था. It wasn't something very great. दफ़अतन ये फ़िक्रा अबू दाऊद शरीफ की हदीस का याद आ गया. All of a sudden I remember this text from the hadith in Abu Dawud Sharif. Abu Dawud Sharif में हुज़ूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम का इशा नकल किया गया है कि इशा की नमाज का वक्त हो जाए और शाम का खाना आ जाए तो पहले खाना खा ले. He says inside Abu Dawud Sharif that Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that if the time of Isha came and also the time for supper came, then eat your food first. Hadith पाक का मतलब और उसके मुतालिकात जो तो शुरू hadith से ताल्लुक़ रखते हैं. He says the explanation of the hadith is mentioned inside the commentaries of a hadith. या तो दफ़अतन मुझे ये फ़िक्रा याद आ गया. It's all of a sudden I've remembered this. And he says that Hazrat Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma से एक शख्स ने बड़े ताज्जुब से पूछा. The person asked Hazrat Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu with great surprise कि हमने हुज़ूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम का ये इरशाद सुना. We heard Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, और गोया ताज्जुब उस पर था. And he was surprised कि जब खाने में मशगूल होगा तो जमात वगैरह तो सब फोट हो जाएगी. That if a person is preoccupied in eating food, he was surprised that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was saying that when the food namaz time comes and food also comes, then eat your food first, then pray namaz later. So he said that, he was surprised at this, that if a person preoccupies himself with eating food, then the namaz with jamaat is going to get missed. As Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu ne usse kaha, وَيْحَكَ مَا كَانَ عِشَاهُمْ أَتَرَاهُ كَانَ مِثْلَ عَشَاءِ أَبِيكَ. So Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu says that وَيْحَكَ مَا كَانَ, their supper, do you not see that it wasn't like the supper of your parents, of your dad? Okay, you eat quite a lot, they just ate a little bit. Their food was very mukhtasar. Time for Aisha came, or supper came, they would just eat the food first, then pray your namaz. But the time in those days, the food was very mukhtasar, very short, very little. Yani, I read it wrong originally. When the context came, we could understand. كَأَتَرَاهُمْ كَانَ مِثْلَ عَشَاءِ أَبِيكَ. Their supper, do you not see that their supper wasn't like the supper of your fathers, but it was very short, very simple little food that they used to eat. जिसका तर्जुमा यह है कि अरे तेरे नाश हो. The meaning of this is कि तेरे नाश हो, may you be ruined. उनका खाना ही क्या था? What was their food? क्या तेरा गुमान ये है तेरे बाबा जैसा खाना था? Do you think that they used to eat like your dads eat? यानी कि बहुत खाना, पेटू. यानी इनके लंबे चौड़े दस्तरखान नहीं होते थे. What it means and says is that the food that they used to eat, the table wasn't greatly long. It wasn't a big massive dastrakhan. जैसे तेरे बाबा के यहाँ हो, as it is with at your dad's place. दो चार खजूरें, a few dates, या एक आध प्याला सत्तू का, or maybe half or a full plate of Sattu. Faqat yahi dastakhan mere chachajan Nawar Markaduh ka tha. He says that my dastakhan of my uncle Moulana Ilyas Sahab rahmatullah alayhi, this was his dastakhan. This was what he ate. The sufra had very little. Ek aad roti us waqt khane ka maamul tha. He might eat one khubz, one piece of bread, one chapati, or maybe half a chapati. Barhal iftar ke baad maghrib ki namaz padhate. Straight after iftar he would perform or lead the Maghrib Salah. Maghrib ke baad tawil naflo ka maamul to unka bachpan se tha. After the Maghrib Salah, he would perform lengthy nafal Salah, and this was his habit from a young age. Lekin Maah Mubarak mein wo Isha ki azan ke kareeb khatam hoti thi. But in the month of Ramadan, he would lengthen it to such an extent that it would complete and come to an end just before the adhan of Isha. Naflo ke baad masjid mein hi thodi der ko let jate. After performing his nafal, he would then lie down inside the masjid for a little while. Khuddam kuch badan daba dete. He says his attendants or his students used to come and press his legs for a little while. Tarawih padhane ke fauran baad let jate. Taqriban 8 घंटे लेटने के बाद, after lying down for about half an hour, Isha की नमाज का वक्त हो जाता. The time for Isha prayer would come. खुद ही तरावी पढ़ाते थे. He would lead the tarawih himself. Hazrat Moulana Ilyas Sahab. तरावी पढ़ाने के बाद फौरन लेट जाते. After performing tarawih, the 20 rakat, he would then lie down. उस वक्त किसी मजलिस या बात करने का मामूल नहीं था. He never had the habit at that time of speaking to anyone. He would perform his tarawih and go straight to bed. बहुत दफ़ा मुझसे फरमाए कि वित्रों का सलाम पहनने के बाद तकिया पर सर रखने से पहले मैं सो जाता हूँ. Many times, as the Shaykh Rahmatullah Alayhi says, that it so happens because of his mujahada and how he spent his Ramadan sleeping less, eating less, and spending most of his time in ibadat. He says that it so happens that after finishing the witr, as soon as the salam is done, before I even put my head on the pillow, I start feeling sleepy. अलबत्ता जब ये सियाकार माह मुबारक में हाज़िर होता है, मुझे हरीस व काल के यहाँ माह मुबारक में तरावी के बाद मेरी इफ्तारी का वक्त होता है. He says, but the situation used to be slightly different when I used to come. The Shaykh Rahmatullah Alayhi used to live in Saharanpur, where he used to be the Shaykh al-Hadith of the main teacher of Hadith in Madhairul Ulum, the madrasa. And in Ramadan he used to come and spend inside the Nizamuddin in Delhi. He says that when I used to come, and it was my habit, and he refers himself as Haris, that greedy, Akkal, and it's someone who ate a lot. He refers to himself in humility. He says it was my habit that after the Tarawih, I would want to eat some food and have some futur. Jisme pulkiya wagera to lazmi thi, in within which pulkiya, yani light snacks. What he means by pulkiya is pakore, samose, sambusa, and all those type of things. He says this was lazim, it was definitely there. और भी अहबाब वगैरह कुछ फल वगैरह ले आते. Many of my friends used to bring some fruit etc. तो इन सब का वक्त वही था. To have all of this stuff was after Tarawih. उस ज़माने में थोड़ी देर के लिए चचा जान ज़रूर चढ़कर फरमाते. In those days my uncle Moulana Ilyas Sahab rahmatullah alayhi would come and spend some little time with me. मगर इनको इसरार से उठा दिया करता था. But I knew that this was his sleeping time. So मैं उनको इसरार करके, I used to force him to go, uncle go to sleep. I'm making him go to sleep. वो मेरे इशार के बावजूद 15-20 मिनट अक्सर लगा ही रहते. And in spite of me insisting, he spent 15-20 minutes with us. 12 बजे उठने का मामूल था. It was his habit to wake up approximately at midnight. उस वक्त खुद्दाम में से कोई शख्स 2 बेज़े उबले हुए गरम पेश करता. And when he used to wake up, then some of his attendants would give him 2 boiled eggs to eat, to give him the energy for the rest of the day. इसलिए उठने के बाद इतने वो पेशाब वुज़ू करते, इतनी देर में वो उबल जाते थे. So what would happen is he would go to the lavatory, he'd do wudu, he'd come back. By that time, the eggs would be boiled and he'd have them. वो 2 बेज़े नौश फरमाकर फिर तहज्जुद के लिए खड़े हो जाते. And after having, so maybe 15-20 minutes after midnight, he'd get up for tahajjud. और सहर के आखिरी वक्त में सलाम फेर कर सहरी नौश फरमाते. And then he would do salam just right at the end before the time of suhoor comes to an end. ऐसे वक्त में कि मैंने अक्सर औकात खुद भी देखा कि उनके दाने हाथ में लुकमा होता और एक शख्स से कहते कि पानी लाओ और दूसरे से फरमाते अजान कहो. It would be such, he would be keeping this time, spending his entire time in ibadat and keeping such a small time. Hazrat Shaykh Rahmatullah, he captures the moment there very beautifully. ऐसे वक्त में, in such a time, कि मैंने अक्सर औकात खुद भी देखा, that many of the times I've seen myself, कि उनके दाने हाथ में लुकमा होता, that in his right hand there would be a lukma, there would be a morsel. और एक शख्स से कहते कि पानी ला, and he would say to another person, one of his attendants, bring some water quickly before the time of Sahri comes, and then he says to the other person, right, go and do adhan quickly. So, he would leave very little time. So, all night, from midnight, past midnight, till sahur, or at the end of Fajr, he would be in tahajjud and praying tahajjud, making dua, etc. Itne muazzin chat par pahunchta, within that time, the muazzin would climb to the roof. There's no mics in those days. He passed away in 1940 approximately, maybe a bit later. I can't remember exactly. 43 Hazrat Tanvi passed away. Hazrat Moulana Ilyas Sahab Rahmatullah passed away 46. Was it 46? 44. 1944. So itne muazzin chat par pahunchta. Within that time, the muazzin would get onto the roof. वो अपने लुकमा और पानी से फारिग हो जाते. He'd finish eating by then, और azan shuru ho jati. It'd be very tight. Some of the mashayikh says about them, they leave a little bit of time between, but this was the habit of Moulana Ilyas Sahab Rahmatullah alayh. और गोलर का किस्सा तो मैं गालिबन किसी जगह लिखवा चुका हूँ कि मेरे और उनके अजीज जो दिल्ली में इमाम थे. He says that the story about the golars means wild fig. So the story in our BT that Sheikh Rahmatullah is referring to, that once, it's in detail inside the footnotes, but once for 3 days there was no food in Nizamuddin, the Tablighi Markaz. There was no food. At Tarawih, before Maghrib, he'd say to the students, is there any food? They said, there's nothing there. He says, okay, there's a wild fig tree there. Just bring the fruit. He'd have a few of these and he'd carry on himself. And on the third day, somebody came and sent him a hadiyah, which was a big, massive pot of palau for all the students and all the people inside the Markaz. So he says that the story about the wild figs, I think I've written about this already. Mere unke aziz jo Delhi mein imam the, mere unke aziz, one of our friends who was very close to us, who was an imam inside a masjid, वो ये समझ कर के भाईजान सारी दिल्ली के पीर है. He thought that Moulana Ilyas Sahab Rahmatullah alayhi is the great peer, the great sheikh of the whole of Delhi. Ramazan mein bahut futuhat aati hongi. He probably gets a lot of gifts in Ramadan. A lot of people dropping off food, samosa, bhaje, pakore, biryani, alim, khose, everything else and anything else that comes. Ek raat guzarne ko wahan gaye. So he says that one night he went there. Iftar ke waqt Chacha Jaan ne pucha. At the time of iftar, at the time of futur, the uncle asked, ke lao bhai, kuch khane ko hai? Is there anything to eat there? Logon ne arz kiya ki Hazrat wahi raat ke golar rakhe hue. He said the only thing we've got, because it was poverty. This was the time of poverty in those days. They started in a lot of difficulties. He said the only thing we've got are the wild figs that we kept over from last night. Farmaya wo lao, wah wah lao. He says wah wah, yani bravo bravo, excellent, bring it. Wahi iftar tha, this was the iftar. Wahi maghrib ke baad ka khana tha, this was the food that they ate after maghrib. और सहर के वक्त भी उन्होंने दरियाफ्त किया कुछ है. At the time of sahur he also said, is there anything there? लोगों ने अर्ज किया, people said वही गोलर है, we've only got these wild figs. 4-5 गोलर नोश फरमाकर सहर बन गई. He had 4-5 of these wild figs. That was his sahur. पूरा किस्सा आप बेटी में गुजर गया. The entire story is inside our beat in the footnotes. अजान के बाद अव्वल वक़्त नमाज पढ़ाते थे. After azan, right at the beginning he used to pray the prayer. सुबह की नमाज के बाद की तकरीर का दस्तूर रमज़ान में चचा जान के यहाँ नहीं था. In the time of my uncle Moulana Ilyas Sahab Rahmatullah alayhi at the Markaz of Tabligh, giving the lecture after Fajr in Ramadan wasn't the habit. इसकी इब्तिदा अजीज़ मौलाना यूसुफ रहमतुल्लाह अलैह ने की. This became the habit during the time of Hazrat Ji Moulana Yusuf Sahab रहमतुल्लाह अलैह. वो नमाज के बाद अपने मुसल्ले पर इशराक तक मशगूल औराद वज़ाइफ में रहते. After performing Fajr, he'd remain on the prayer mat up till the time of Ishraq, and he would be busy himself in wird, awrad, wadaif, wazifa, और सारे खुद्दाम नमाज पढ़ते ही सो जाते. And whereas all the different खुद्दाम, they were tired from the night, they'd all go to sleep. He'd stay awake. Hasbe tawfiq utte rehte. If they had tawfiq, they would stay awake, depending. But Hazrat Rahmatullah alayh, he would stay on the prayer mat like this. वो इशराक तक अपने मुसल्ले पर रहते और इशा की नमाज पढ़ कर वहाँ से उठते. He'd stay on his prayer mat up till the time of Ishraq. He would pray the time, he would perform the salah of shuruq, and then he would get up. फारिग होने के बाद कभी थकान महसूस होता. After finishing, sometimes he would feel a lot of tiredness. और फरागत रहती तो थोड़ी देर को लेते. And if he was able to, he'd lie down for a little while. वरना मेवात के जाने वालों को नसाए आने वाले मेहमान से गुफ्तगू फरमाते. Or else at that time, those mehman or those guests who came from Mewat, they would come and he would give them some sort of advice. आने वाले मेहमान का चचा जान के यहाँ बहुत ज़्यादा एहतिमाम था. Those the guests that came to the Markaz, Hazrat Rahmatullah alayhi had a lot of एहतिमाम, diligence regarding them. हस्ब मरातिब उनके खाते अपने मामलात की भी हर्ज फरमा दिया करते थे. He would make some sort of modifications to his daily routine on account of them. Sayyido ka Chashajaan Nawar Kadu ke ya khas ehtimam tha. If any Sayyid or Sadat came, then he had a special diligence for them. He used to give them the right protocol. उनके एहतराम एहतिमाम व खातिर की मुझको भी बहुत ताकीद फरमाई. also advised me the same. उनके बावजूद शागिद और मुरीद होने के बाद लग़्ज़िशों पर भी मुचश्शम पोशी फरमाते. And if they were students or murids, then he would also add some mistakes. He let it pass. He wouldn't take him to task. मैंने एक मरतबा चचाजान के शागिद मुरीद खादिम की एक शिकायत की. He says that once I complained about one of his students or one of his khadims. फरमाया मुझे भी मालूम है मगर वो सैयद है. He said I know this as well, but he's a sayyid. और इस लफ्ज़ को कुछ ऐसी अज़मत से फरमाया कि मैं भी मरूब हो गया. He gave it some sort of importance that even I withheld. अली मियाँ जहाजहान रहमतुल्लाह की सवान मौलाना इलियास रहमतुल्लाह अलैह उनकी दीनी दावा में लिखते हैं. मौलाना अबुल हसन अली नदवी रहमतुल्लाह अलैह in his book about the biography of Maulana Ilyas Sahab रहमतुल्लाह अलैह, he writes कि मौलाना मोइनुल्लाह नदवी रावी है कि मैं बीमार था, रमज़ान का ज़माना था. मौलाना मोइनुल्लाह नदवी says that he narrates that I was ill. It was the month of Ramadan. मेरा खाना जाने लगा. मौलाना नफल के लिए खड़े हुए थे. लड़के से कहा कि खाना रख दो, मैं ले जाऊंगा. He says there was time for food and Moulana rahmatullah alayh was ready to perform prayer. He said to the khuddam, leave the food here, I'll take it to him. वो समझा नहीं, he didn't understand. खाना खोटे पर पहुंचा दिया. He made sure the food reached me. नमाज पढ़कर तशरीफ़ लाए. But Moulana Ilyas rahmatullah alayh, he after performing his prayer, he came himself. फरमाया कि मैंने बच्चे से कहा था. He said I told the attendant कि खाना मैं ले जाऊंगा. I shall bring the food. ये खुद ले आया. He brought the food himself. फिर मेरे पास बैठे हुए देर तक शफ़क़त व महब्बत और दिलजुई की बातें करता रहा. And then for a little while he stayed with me and he kept talking nicely to me. इसमें मौलाना साहब की सियादत को ज़्यादा दखल है. He says that the reason behind this was मौलाना मोइनुल्लाह साहब रहमतुल्लाह अलैह was a sayyid. और दोपहर को थोड़ी देर घंटा 2 घंटा आराम फरमाने का मामूल था. It was the habit of Maulana Ilyas Sahab rahmatullah alayhi to rest for about an hour or maybe 1.5 hours during the afternoon. ज़ोहर की नमाज के बाद अपने हुज्जत शरीफ में तशरीफ़ लाकर आने जाने वाले मेहमानों से गुफ्तगू फरमाते. After that he would go into his room and he would stay with those guests that came. असर तक यही सिलसिला रहता. Up till asr this was the condition. इस दरमियान में माह मुबारक का कोई सबक किसी का होता तो पढ़ाते. And if there was any lesson that he needed to teach, he would teach. असर के बाद मगरिब तक ज़िक्र बिल जहर में मशगूल रहते. From asr till maghrib he would remain in zikr. बगैर रमज़ान के ये ज़िक्र आखिर शब में हुआ करता था. Outside Ramadan this would take place at the last part of the night, जो तहज्जुद के बाद से सुबह की नमाज के करीब तक रहता. Which would take place at the time of last part of the night, from the time after tahajjud up till Fajr prayer. इसलिए कि बगैर रमज़ान के सुबह की नमाज गायत इसफार में होती है. The reason behind this was that aside from Ramadan the Fajr prayer would pray right at the end time. मैंने अपने जुमला अकाबिर में ज़िक्र बिल जहर का आखिर तक पाबंद जितना चचजान नवर मरकदू को पाया इतना किसी को नहीं पाया. He says that for my all akabir, the person who I saw that was the most diligent in the loud dhikr right until the end, I only saw as diligent as this Maulana Ilyas Sahab rahmatullah alayh. बीमारी के चंद सालों से कबल 12 तस्बीह इसमेज़ार का ज़िक्र बगैर रमज़ान के आखिर शब में और माह मुबारक में असर से मगरिब तक का बहुत एहतिमाम था. Until he became ill towards the end of his life. Outside in Ramadan he would do it between asr and maghrib, and outside Ramadan he would do it towards the end of the night. चशजान नवल मरकदू का तीसरा हज मुबारक में शुरू हुआ. तीसरा हज माह मुबारक में शुरू हुआ. He says that Maulana Hazrat Maulana Ilyas rahmatullah alayhi's third hajj began inside Ramadan. Ali Mian Jajjan की सवाने में लिखते हैं, Maulana Ali Mian Sahab writes about it कि in 1251 में आप तीसरी बार हज को गए. He went for his third hajj in that month. रमज़ान का चाँद निज़ामुद्दीन में नज़र आ गया था. The month of Ramadan was seen in Nizamuddin. तरावी दिल्ली के स्टेशन पर हुई. So the safar of hajj he went during Ramadan. He went a bit early. And he prayed the Tarawih Delhi ke station पर हुई. On that night they performed Tarawih at the station of Delhi. Tarawih से फरागत पर कराची की गाड़ी में सवार हो गए. And after that they got onto the train for Karachi. ये नाकारा भी उस वक्त शजान नवरमा की मायशायत के लिए दिल्ली गया हुआ था. He says that I also went with my uncle to Delhi on that occasion. गाड़ी में सामान वगैरह रखवाने के बाद दिल्ली के स्टेशन पर शजान ने तरावी पढ़ाई थी. He says that after putting the luggage inside the car or inside the train carriage, we perform Tarawih at the station. जो हज़रात मुशाहिद करने वाले साथ थे वो तो थे ही. Those people that had accompanied him to see him off were there. और दिल्ली के लोग भी बहुत से जमा हो गए. Many of the people of Delhi also came. कुछ लोग अपने अपनी मसाजिद में तरावी पढ़ने के बाद चचा जान की तरावी में आकर शरीक होते रहे. Many people performed tarawih at their places and came there. कि मसाजिद में अमूमन जल्दी फरागत हो जाती है. That people would finish the tarawih quickly inside the masjids. And Moulana Ilyas Sahab Rahmatullah Alayhi's tarawih would take a little bit later. अलिफ लाम मीम के पारा से तरावी शुरू कर दी. He started with अलिफ लाम मीम और निहायत इत्मीनान से जैसा कि अपनी मस्जिद में पढ़ रहे हो तरावी पढ़ा. And with a lot of contentment and ease he performed the tarawih like as if he's in a masjid. कि गाड़ी लेट थी और सवा घंटे के करीब उसके छूटने में बाकी था. Because the train carriage had been delayed. तबलीगी गुफ्तगू तो अजीज़ी मौलाना यूसुफ रहमतुल्लाह अलैह की तरफ से जिसके देखने वाले अब भी हज़ारों होंगे हर वक्त का एक मशगला था. He says that Moulana Ilyas Sahab Rahmatullah would talk about Tabligh as it was the habit of Moulana Ilyas Yusuf Sahab Rahmatullah Alayh, and there's many thousand people who've seen this. Just the last few lines. खाने के दरमियान में हो, रेल के डिब्बों में हो या स्टेशनों पर हो. He says if they're inside, whilst they're eating, whilst they're on the train, whilst they're on the carriages, whilst they're at the station, they talk about Tabligh. Aziz Muhammad Thani Sawani Yusufi में लिखते हैं, Moulana Muhammad Thani Rahmatullah Alayh writes in the biography of Moulana Yusuf Sahab Rahmatullah Alayh, Moulana Ilyas Sahab Rahmatullah Alayh हमेशा रमज़ान मुबारक का बड़ा एहतिमाम फरमाते थे. Moulana Ilyas Sahab Rahmatullah Alayh would spend Ramadan with a lot of diligence. मेवात की बकसरत जमातें उस माह मुबारक में मरकज़ आती थी. During the holy month, lots of jamaats would come from Mewat to Nizamuddin. इस महीने में मुख्तलिफ इलाकों में जमातें निकलती थी. And in addition to that, many jamaats would go out to different areas during the month. खुद मरकज़ में मकामी काम बड़े एहतिमाम से किया जाता था. And within the markaz itself, the work in the immediate vicinity would take place with great diligence during the holy month. Allah Almighty give us a tawfiq to act upon all that's been said. The Mashaykh spent Ramadan in a certain way, in a particular way. And this Ramadan, it's a bit different to last Ramadan and the Ramadans before. The nights are longer and the days are shorter. Maghrib is at approximately 5:45 and then Tarawih takes place. Isha will be at 7:45 and after Isha. And then after Isha, it's a time when there's a lot of time and people might spend their time in doing things differently to previous years. There might be barbecues on the weekend. You might be going out to eat somewhere. You might be meeting up a lot of parties, a lot of dawats. But rather than spending time in all that frivolous stuff, and we've all spent our youth doing all those frivolous stuff, Friday night barbecue, Saturday night barbecue, especially in winter. But rather than spending our time doing that, if we just organize our times a little bit better and try and spend our time in ibadat, in worshipping Allah Almighty. And the best place to spend your time in Ramadan, to understand how the Mashaykh actually spend their time, is to go off in itikaf to a khanqa, where the khanqa nizam is taking place. See the Mashaykh with our own eyes, how they spend the Ramadan, and to bring back some of that flavor into our lives, which can then boost us for the rest of the 11 months until the next Ramadan. May Allah Almighty give us a tawfiq. Inshallah, it's probably last majlis before Ramadan, unless the moon's not sighted, but I've got a feeling it's probably sighted, and first Tarawih will be on Friday. Wa akhiru da'wana, alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Inshallah, zikr for 5 minutes, and then we'll call it a day. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا إله إلا الله 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 محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا إله إلا الله 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 محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا إله إلا الله 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 سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا وسندنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الله 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 لا إله إلا الله سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا وسندنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وأزواجه وأتباعه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا جزاك الله خير إن شاء الله السلام عليكم